Gas prices going down. Food prices going up. As prices for crude oil and other commodities ease for now. Americans have gotten a very small dose of relief at the gas pump, but not much. But prices on food and many other things are still rising rapidly. And food inflation is here to stay and will probably get worse for many things. Theoretically, that's because retail prices for cereal, eggs, milk, cheese, and meat generally lag by several months or longer. Some food items may come down a little bit as commodity prices cool off. Others might not budge a cent, and some may actually increase, if that makes any sense. Food prices tend to go up pretty quickly, and they tend to stick on the way down, said an economist with the American Farm Bureau, which tracks retail food prices on a quarterly basis. So, that's bad news for U.S. consumers still struggling with too high costs for fuel and household goods. Because in America, the U.S., anytime the gasoline is higher than $1 or $2 per gallon, well, the economy can't do any good. Well, the gas is never going back down into that again, not likely. So the U.S. economy is still in trouble, no matter what anybody says. And it's much worse for people in poor countries like Haiti and in Africa, many other places around the world, where violent food riots broke out earlier this year as world food prices spiked. In the U.S., retail food prices have jumped on average at least 6% this year, triple the normal inflation rate of around 2%. As ever-soaring demand for grains, coupled with severe weather around the globe, around the world, battered crops and sent world prices for rice, flour, and other grains and other staples soaring. Food manufacturers have dealt with the higher costs in a variety of ways, from raising retail prices, and this is a good one, to shrinking boxes of cereal and bags of potato chips and other things, so they can sell less product for the same price, which is in effect still a price increase. A roundabout way, kind of. But while easing prices for crude and other commodities have allowed retail gas prices to come down a little, food prices have been much more stubborn. In other words, prices are still going up there. The economics of the food business are partly to blame. Though crude oil is the main ingredient of gasoline, processed foods like cereal, crackers, or cookies use only a small amount of corn, wheat, and other grains, limiting manufacturers' pricing power. So basically, there's only a few cents worth of corn in a box of cornflakes, so food prices are much, much slower to react to the downside than energy prices. Another factor keeping food prices higher. Although commodities prices have fallen from record levels, they're still well above historical levels. Corn and soybeans have dropped approximately 24% and 17% in the last 2 months, but are still about double, or at least double where they were 2 years ago. The United States cannot run this way. As long as if there's not cheap oil and cheap food, the United States is not going to do good, are they? No. As long as we're in this world of expensive oil and commodities, the prices that you're seeing now in the grocery shelves are not going away. said another economist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who tracks retail food prices. And it's a similar story in poor countries around the globe. While the price of rice, for instance, a staple consumed by half the world's population, has fallen 32% from record levels reached in April, the savings there and for other foods have yet to come down to year-ago levels. In other words, they're not going back down to where they used to be. Prices for things are still going to keep going up, even for the oil, sooner or later, because of rising demand. And there's always natural disasters, and there will be other disasters, man-made disasters too. They're coming. Yes, they are. More of them. In Ethiopia, for example, food prices at local markets are still 3 times higher than last year. That's very bad for poor people. Lots of starving people around the world, and that's called famine, of course. And it means food inflation isn't a temporary problem. It's not going away. So, looking ahead to next year, economists see a theoretical mixed bag for American consumers. While falling grain prices should supposedly slow the rate of increases for baked goods, the USDA says people can expect to pay more for other items like beef, pork, and chicken. That's because, as grain markets took off, the cost of corn and soybean-based animal feed skyrocketed ever higher. And now, livestock owners, who spend half or more of their production costs on feeding their animals, have had to thin the size of their herds and flocks to deal with the increases, which in turn, well, you know the story, drives up the price of meat. Cow slaughter has jumped 22% over last year, while the slaughter of hogs is up 10%. Much of that meat has gone into freezers to handle excess supply. But as the inventory dwindles ever smaller, livestock owners won't have the money to replenish their herds to meet demand. More ripples, the ripple effect. That's going to have some serious consequence at the retail level. So the only thing left is for those prices to go up. Well, in general, all prices are going up for all things. Like I say, there will be a lot more disasters. They're on the horizon, aren't they? More droughts, more floods, more hurricanes, more tropical storms. More and more intense weather is on the way because of what's going on in the world and the pole shift, which has begun. Expensive animal feed has also battered chicken producers, who so far have resisted passing on those costs to consumers to safeguard or contain chicken's image as a good value compared to steaks and pork chops. But even that's about to change. Basically, no matter what anybody says, sooner or later, everything will be going up again. Rapidly. Has to. Because things are getting ready to change. Drastically. From a consumer standpoint, more and more of these feed costs are going to be passed on, and that means ever higher prices at the supermarket. Yes, inflation is real. Inflation is bad. And there are things coming that will affect all this. But in general, the USA is in decline, and America is in real trouble. And these are more signs of the end times transition days. And there are many signs.